welcome to Call Her Daddy.
Thank you.
So everyone probably knows you from TikTok, and I feel like sometimes when people pop up on the internet, there's this whole thing of like, wait, where did this person come from? Who are they? What are they about? What is their life story? So can you give us like your elevator pitch of like who you are?
So I'm from New Jersey, very small town. I've changed schools quite a bit. I've played soccer all my life. I've also been, doing music all my life because my dad was heavily into music. I always grew up with a studio in my house. And I ended up getting around 8 concussions. I had suffered from pretty bad brain injuries, and I had to completely stop sports altogether. And I was a pretty athletic person growing up, and soccer was my life. When I would get punished, my parents would ground me from going to practice. And I'd freak out. And so as soon as I stopped doing that, I had to find something else. And I started posting on social media, and then I'm here.
Here we are. You became popular on TikTok. How did it feel to have so much attention so quickly?
Oh my God, I love it. I mean, I'm a Leo, so I love attention. And I felt like I never really got that growing up. And my entire life, that was kind of something that I chased, whether it was wanting friendships. I just wanted people to like me. And so the second that I, for once, wasn't just a loner kid, and people kind of were interested in me, it was a really good feeling.
How, though, did the kids at school treat you?
Everyone in my school, or most of my friends, had the app before I did. And I was told, to download it, and I made a video during school. And I just remember going to biology class and going to the bathroom to check my phone after. And I was like, whoa, these are famous people following me, one. And then my notifications were insane. I blew up during school. And everyone thought it was so cool at first. But then when it got to a certain degree, it was I was an outcast because of it. And I would walk into class, and they would take pictures of me from Google and make them all of the home screens on the computer. And then teachers would use my name and my salary as anecdotes for math problems. And it was weird stuff. And having freshmen kids come up to me and ask for pictures. It's it was a lot. And I just remember I hate school. I hated school, and the only way I was going to college was for soccer. And when that was out of the picture, I was no, I'm going to college. And then when this happened, it was I begged and cried to just be homeschooled.
Would you confide in anyone about that?
It's hard to explain, because I'm the type of person that I get so embarrassed with what I go through that I don't really want to talk about it. And I try to just hold in everything and just deal with it myself. And I also feel no one gives a shit about me or what I'm going through. And that's just how I have a very big victim complex, and so I just would just take it and then cry about it alone. And I occasionally, I'd talk about it with my really close friends, but it was just really weird for me, because I the year before that too, I was I felt I was already became an outcast in my school. And in high school, I was the new kid as a freshman. No one's ever seen me before. I moved to a different town, and I left my previous school because I felt I didn't belong there. And I was kind of, alone and outcasted. And so I moved to a different high school, and I was everyone loves the new kids, at first. And then sophomore year was downhill.
You mentioned that you kind of had this music studio in your house that your dad had put together, and he kind of had aspirations in the industry. Did he give you any advice of what to do, how to handle moving forward, and how to kind of craft your career?
Me and my dad have, we don't have the best relationship. I'll always love him because he is my father, and I plan on working on our relationship in the future.
You made a big decision to move to LA at one point. Can you talk about when and why you decided to leave New Jersey and go to LA.
Yeah, so it was during the pandemic, and everything was just like, everything was on lockdown. And at that point, I was going to the studio when I would go to LA, and I was visiting LA like quite often. Like, there was a point where I would go to public school like Monday to Friday, and I had like senior option, which is where I had enough credits to just like leave at like 11. And I would leave at 11, go right to the airport, fly to LA, and then come back Sunday or Monday, and then do school the rest of the week. And I couldn't stay locked in my house in New Jersey, not doing anything that I, created already and started. And like, school was just, online anyway. So I bought a plane ticket when I was 17 at 1 a.m. I had to leave at 4 a.m. And my parents knew that I was going to run away, so they took all of my suitcases. And I packed everything up in like old school bags and my old soccer bags and like duffel bags that I had, and got an Uber and left.
Were you scared?
Terrified. The worst was that I had a connecting flight, and so they had no idea. And I'm on my first flight, and I'm thinking, oh, I got away with it. I land on my connecting flight, and phone blown up. Where am I? All this stuff. Like, they're tracking my flight. They know where I am. Like, cops are coming to get me. Like, they're not gonna. And I'm like, what the heck? So I'm just like playing, like, I don't know. I was like trying to be like undercover, like at like the airport, like freaking out. My anxiety was so bad. And I just hopped on the next flight, and I just kept going.
You're 17 years old? Mm-hmm. Who did you stay with? Did you have any friends in LA?
No, yeah. So I was visiting LA a lot before I ended up running away. And so I had a boyfriend at the time, and I stayed, at their house, and I just went straight there because that's where I was like staying before. And so like I knew like a few people there, and I had a place, and in my mindset at the time was like, anything other than being home is better for me. Yeah. It's like I would have done anything to get out of that situation.
And then you never went back. So you were dating Josh Richards, who is also a TikTok star. What was your relationship like?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like because of social media, we developed a very serious relationship for it was too serious for how young we were. And he was a part of Sway at the time too, and those boys, they were blowing up. That was their prime when we started dating. So them being 17, 18, blowing up, living in LA, in a house of their own. It's like a frat house of social media. And it's hard to resist some things. And I wouldn't say that this is the truth, but how I felt at the time was that a lot of the good parts of our relationship was simply for views and content and that stuff. And it got really hard for me to process because I fall for people heavy, and I get very attached. And so seeing things a certain way was kind of just I couldn't understand it.
Everything you see is not always what it actually is.
No, yeah, exactly. And I feel about 2 years ago, I made a drastic change with my persona online and how I let people see me, because the very beginning of me being online, I was doing whatever I could to be the person that everyone wanted me to be and to be liked, and I faked almost everything. I wasn't being real. I wasn't myself. It was just, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Give us an example of what you would be faking?
I mean, for one, my style and, my attitude. I have struggled with mental health so much, and I am a pretty sad person, but in the beginning, like, I developed such a bubbly character that was almost like, like, I don't care, like, I'm just happy and, like, giggly, and, like, it was just not me. And then over time, I just, like, kind of, like, allowed myself to be, like, that person that, like, everyone could, like, make fun of.
How did you try to maintain any type of autonomy over who you really were versus what was going on the internet that you were posting?
Yeah, I mean, like, I just struggled a lot with my identity at that point, and I feel like the second I actually started, making music and, like, writing my music, it really helped me, like, understand how, like, who I was, and that's when I just stopped caring. Like, I'm just gonna do what I want to do, and I'm gonna be myself, because, I mean, it's, like, the best thing to do at this point.
Last year, all of the drama unfolded between what seemed like two TikTok couples. There was you and Josh, and Mads and Jaden, and you were all friends until you weren't, and it kind of all blew up.
Yeah.
What happened?
See, this is just, like, a very, like, sticky situation to talk about, because I feel like there's, like, multiple sides to every story, and it was just, we were all living in a house together, and I felt like separately we each were going through problems in our relationship, and me and Jaden were really good friends, and we started doing la-di-di, and that's one, like, everyone's like, oh my god, like, they started, like, falling for each other when they did la-di-di, and I'm like, no, like, that, it wasn't, like, that's not, like, what happened. It was, like, after, like, the song was already made and everything was already done, it was, like, after, yeah, like, we were struggling in our relationships separately, and there was a lot of tension in the house too, because certain people didn't really get along, and Josh at the time, like, before we broke up, he was just so busy with work, and I was, like, heavily, like, starting my music career, and so there was just a point, we decided to break up too, because I was struggling a lot mentally, and I've just realized that, like, hey, like, we started dating when we were really young, and we're both just not the same people as when we started, and I just felt like we had a lot of different interests, and it got to a point where sometimes you just realize that you're more comfortable than, in love at the moment. I don't know, we broke up, and then stuff just started happening, and it wasn't, like, anything, like, sneaky, really. I felt like I just let my heart kind of just, like, take control, and I knew that it was, like, really bad timing, and, like, not the best situation, and I just know how it looked, and it should have looked that way, because I did make a poor decision, but, like, I don't regret anything. And also too, like, which I don't want to use any, like, it's I don't want to sound like I'm, like, making up excuses for myself, but, like, with my, like, mental health stuff, and with BPD, there's a thing called favorite person, and, like, we can get into that, like, more in depth, but your brain basically, like, unwillingly attaches itself to someone, and when that happens, like, that's all you can think about, and you'll do anything to make that person happy, and they become your life and identity at that point. And it turns romantic because it's so hard to identify the difference between that. When you're so in love with someone, it's like they become your favorite person. But with BPD, it's, like, different. And I think because me and Jaden were spending so much time with each other, with music and all that stuff, and we were really close friends, and I wasn't with Josh anymore, and even when I was, it's like he was gone most of the time. We didn't really spend that much time together. My brain attached itself to Jaden in that way, and so that's when I was like, I'd do anything at that moment to make it work. But then, social media got into play, and then the whole drama started, and it created it something that it probably wasn't going to be. Like, we started dating it became serious and an actual thing after everything broke out on the internet, because we felt like we had to. The night that everything kind of broke out was the day that we performed on Ellen. It was a headline that we announced that we're dating, we made it official. And I was like, what the heck? I'm not gonna lie, I was being very selfish, and I obviously felt a certain way, but I feel like everyone can say at certain points that what people say online is not gonna affect them. And even if you don't want it to and you don't let it subconsciously, it's gonna be in your head,
Yeah.
and it's gonna do something. And I'm just very thankful that I got to deal with that situation with someone by my side, because I've dealt with a scandal similar to that, and I was completely alone dealing with it. So it was different, and I felt like a blessing and a curse to, go through it with Jaden. But it was really hard. I just didn't want to really talk about the situation, because I was, one, kind of embarrassed, but two, also very angry at the way that everything played out. And it was just something that made me really upset, because at the time I just thought that I was doing something that would make me happy, but then I had the whole world, calling me a slut and telling me that I'm a backstabbing bitch and all this stuff, and I'm a homie hopper and a homewrecker and all this stuff. And it was just very frustrating to me, because I was there's so many aspects of the entire thing that no one knows about.
I think it also helps clarify, again, like we said, everyone has different perspectives, and I appreciate you just kind of speaking from your perspective, because I think, again, a lot of people are just going to respect how gracefully and respectfully you handled the situation, and you continue to handle the situation.
I feel bad more than anything, and I've realized that I just was really selfish.
Again, I appreciate you just being honest and taking ownership, and you and Jaden kind of just become in this huge relationship that becomes larger than life, which had already happened to you once with Josh, of everyone wanting to watch everything you're doing on the internet, and then it ends. What happened?
We honestly got to experience such amazing things together. I mean, I performed at Lollapalooza with him, and we did everything. And I was I was on tour with him for a little bit when he was on tour with MGK, and again, I wouldn't regret it. And we've had a lot of great moments that I would cherish forever. And it was just, everyone already had something to say about it and us. And as much as, we wanted to not let things affect us, it did. And during our relationship too, we both really struggled mentally. And we also were kind of because of how it started, I felt we always felt we were outcasted from everyone, and it was just kind of an us against the world type thing. And that got hard when we both were struggling so much personally, and there was just a lot of things that I felt we both needed to work on before jumping into another relationship, which we did way too fast. Yeah. And it got really tricky, and our mental health just got the both of us. And we just had a lot of growing to do. And I felt there was also the pressure of us, all of the drama, we felt we had to make it last.
There is speculation that he cheated. Is that true?
I wouldn't. Okay, not physically.
Okay.
As far, I don't think. And I don't blame him for anything, because at the time when things started happening, I wasn't the best person in a relationship because I was struggling so much. And I know how it feels to, want attention from other people when you're not getting it by the person that you're with. And, there's just a few things that I wasn't too happy about, and that made me very insecure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When and why did you begin to struggle with your mental health?
So I started going to therapy when I was 6. I was diagnosed with anxiety, and I think that there were some signs that my parents picked up on that they were like, whoa. Like, I don't know why she's freaking out. Like, I would get attached to certain things and freak out if I didn't have them on me, or I didn't have them around. And then I think I had to go on a plane for the first time, and my reaction to that was just a telltale sign that I needed to go get treatment. So so I started going to therapy when I was 6 and doing family therapy as well, because there was custody battles and stuff like that. My parents were never together, but for the beginning of my life, they tried living together, and then that caused a lot of stress for me. Which living at home was just hard for me. And when I was 14, which was I was a sophomore in high school. I had, and it was shortly after I got my last concussion. I spiraled, and I guess the trauma that my brain had just exacerbated all of my mental health, and everything just went terrible. I developed really bad ADHD, and I couldn't go to school because I couldn't read more than 2 sentences without vomiting. I had to go to ocular and vestibular therapy to learn how to run or balance on one foot and catch balls, and how to track my eyes because it was really bad. And because of my ADHD, getting really bad because of my brain injury, I struggled a lot mentally, and that's when I had my first actual suicide attempt, and I was hospitalized for it. So that was pretty rough.
Did your family find you, or how did they find out?
Yeah, I overdosed on a medication that I was prescribed to aid my concussion, and the pain that came with it, and my migraines and all that stuff. And I was at my dad's house at the time, and I think he was making dinner, and I was upstairs in my room, and he kept calling me down for dinner, and I guess I wasn't answering. And I don't remember much. All I remember was going in the bathroom, and I had an old glass cup that was empty in my room, and I was just you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna do it now. I was very impulsive because of my ADHD, and I was so deeply depressed. And I've always dealt with having such intense and deep feelings where I would just I was so depressed, and I would cry, and I couldn't stop crying, and I'd get so mad and angry and mean, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And when it got worse because of my concussions, I felt I was insane, and that there was no getting better, and I was done, and I felt I was a burden to my family, and I caused so much pain because of how I was mentally. And so I went to a bathroom and filled it up with sink water, and I overdosed. And I just remember while it was kicking in, I sat down and I wrote everyone notes. And I think I just passed out on the floor, and my dad found me and just carried my limp body and called 911. And I just remember there was a hospital that was like so close to the house, and I was like in and out of like consciousness, and like I just remember his voice echoing, you know. I didn't really know what was going on, and he was like on the phone with the ambulance, like freaking out and like asking how fast that they could come and all this stuff. And he was like, you know, I'm just gonna drive. I'm just gonna put her in my car and just like drive to the nearest hospital. And they were like telling him not to do it. And so he was like trying to drive to meet them closer because they wouldn't come. And I just remember them like dragging me out of his car just to put me in the back seat. And then I vividly remember like my mom like yelling at me while the ambulance doors was closing while I'm on like the stretcher, and I just like woke up in the hospital. But I think the scariest and like most traumatizing thing for me was my little brother witnessing it and him just like, you know, crying, and I felt like I just like scarred him for life, almost seeing that, and him just being like, is Sissy okay? Like, what's wrong with Sissy? Like, freaking out, and it's just, yeah.
How did you and your whole family, like, begin to try to just help you recover and try to move forward with life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I think that my parents were more, like, mad at me than anything, which was very hard for me to deal with because I'm like, I was just like in so much pain, you know, like how, and I think that like I just wanted like, I think that was a moment where I just wanted to be loved the most, and supported. And I've thought about death and suicide since I was like 10. And so, you know, being in a hospital and not knowing, like I was too young to know like what actually like what happened and what would happen. And I was getting my blood work done like all the time, like all throughout the night. Like I was like on IVs and all this stuff. I had like nurses and like officers that would like, I was on suicide watch. You know, I couldn't pee without people following me. I couldn't do anything. And it sucked. And then I thought that like once I got better, I could go home. And all I wanted was to go home.
So did you end up having to go away?
Yeah. They put me on a stretcher, I think like 3 days later, when a bed opened up out of place, and I arrived at a psych ward. I was obviously in the pediatric, you know, because I was 14, so it was like, you know, kids around my age, and I was very shy and timid and scared and embarrassed, and I didn't want to talk to anyone. Like, I don't want to, like, open up to anyone. Like, when they would have group, it's like, no way I'm sharing, like, my story or, like, why I'm here, anything like that. And then I learned that there is a point system, and you have to in order to get out. And I was on level 1, and you got to be on level 4 to even get considered to leave. And, yeah, and that was scary, too, because my parents also placed me on phone protocol. So you don't have phones. And phone protocol is when you can't even use the payphone to call anyone. You don't get calls, you can't. So I was completely, like, isolated and alone, like, in that spot. And it was traumatizing. But then as soon as I got comfortable in there, and like started making friends, like it was like fun. And then you start feeling like, you know, I felt like I belonged, you know, for the first time.
If you could like say something to that 14-year-old girl now where you're at, like what would you say to yourself?
Oh my God, thank God she was in there, because I mean I wouldn't be where I am now. Yeah, and I just felt so like hopeless at that point, because I couldn't really see like a future after getting out of there.
At 18, you got a diagnosis for borderline personality disorder. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so borderline personality disorder is very tricky, and it's different for everyone that has it, because it's basically a self-taught disorder that is developed from childhood trauma. And it's not like a chemical imbalance, which I have other, you know, my anxiety and like depression and all that stuff, that is, but this isn't, because it's just habits and almost like defense mechanisms that you've developed from trauma growing up, and it just adapts your entire personality. And there's a lot of things that come into play with, like, very harsh mood swings, and then, you get very intense, like, manic episodes, and identity problems, like with self-identity, and abandonment issues, and the list can go on, but it is one of the most, like, painful mental health illnesses because of how intense and severe your emotions become when you have it. So say, like, whenever I feel any sort of sadness, my brain kind of shuts off all the signals for any other emotion, and I am unable to process or remember what happiness feels like, or that happiness is an emotion at all. So all I feel is sad, and all I can ever feel is sadness, and that there's no escaping it. And it's like, it hurts. Like, it's like it's so painful mentally that it starts to physically hurt, and you can't really control anything. And that's where I struggle the most, because it makes you act out in ways that, isn't you. And you really have to learn how to become very self-aware in order to help yourself.
How did you feel when you got the diagnosis?
Relieved. My mom always thought I had it, but I was previously misdiagnosed with bipolar, and I was like, yeah, okay, maybe, because, like, it ran in my family, but I would, like, look it up and, like, research, and I was like, this doesn't make sense, because it's, like, not me. And so when I was diagnosed with BPD, it made a lot of sense.
When you said your mom always thought you had it, would she say that to you? Like, how did that affect you?
Yeah, and I also knew that she would bring it up when I would get, like, evaluations and, all this stuff. And I just remember people being like, we can't diagnose her with that because she's under 18. And when I was diagnosed, she told me, like, I knew it, too. Yeah, at first it makes you feel like something's wrong with you. But I've just kind of learned to that, like, at least I know what's wrong.
Yeah. When you talked about the trauma that you endured, can you clarify what you were talking about?
I just dealt with a lot of hard things growing up, and it's just hard for me to talk about it because I don't really want to, like, throw anyone under the bus, but I had a really rough childhood, and it was just really hard for me. But, like, even, like, when I got older too, I got trauma from people that weren't just, like, in my family, like, when it came to, like, boys, and, like, I feel like almost every girl now deals with, like, sexual trauma because people fucking suck. But I just went through a lot of fucking shit that I don't know if I'll ever be, like, comfortable opening up about it, because, like, right now I'm trying to, especially in therapy, I'm trying to learn how to detach myself from it and learn that it doesn't really, it's not a part of me, and it doesn't make me who I am, and I'm also trying to learn how to forgive. So, yeah.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think so many women, it's like, it's an ongoing journey. Mm-hmm. And we talked about social media, and obviously with your mental health, like, has anyone ever suggested that you step away from social to preserve your well-being?
Oh my God, yes. I've gone on a lot of breaks. The problem is that, like, I'm a teenage girl and I don't want to get off social media, and I also care too much about what people say. And so even though I know it's going to hurt me from reading comments online and scrolling until I find a negative one, because that's what I do for some reason, I'll just keep scrolling until I see a hate comment. Yeah. And then I'll keep scrolling until I see more. Yeah. But it's like, I I don't know, I just have a problem, and, my team suggests it all the time, and even, like, my friends, and I know it's best for me, but I feel like sometimes I'll freak out more if I don't know what's being said about me. So it's a hard thing.
In June of this year, you lost your close friend and fellow TikTok star, Cooper Noriega.
Yeah.
He lost his life. First of all, I just want to say I'm so sorry. In what ways has losing your best friend affected your life?
I feel like this was just something that I couldn't really ever comprehend, and I feel like I don't really have like close family. I'm not that close with my family, and I'm just like alone out here, and like all I really had was Cooper, and he was like a brother to me, and my best friend ever, like twin flame. Like, I believe that you have like multiple soulmates in your life, and I feel like he was like my platonic soulmate, like 100%, like me, as a boy, and I've never had anyone understand me the way that he did. So this kid struggled, just as much as I did, maybe even more, and I knew that, and I felt like as long as I knew him, it was an ongoing battle to keep him here, and to make sure that he was safe. And drug addiction is just something that's so scary, and I felt like everyone just did as much as they could, but I never thought that that day would ever come. And I was, it just sucked, because I just like remember like waking up with, like, from a text from him that day, and I didn't want to believe it. Like, I couldn't. I lost myself. Like, I lost myself completely. Like, I was destroyed, because there was never a thought in my brain that I would ever have to live a single day without him. I never thought that there would be a day where I didn't even text him, or not see him. And up until that point too, like, we were spending every day with each other. Like, so, and then I think, like, it just got really hard, and it was just like a very big, like, tragic thing for everyone, very unexpected. I think, we all knew that he was struggling a lot more than before, but I didn't ever think that he would, leave. I haven't really, like, told anyone this, but, like, we openly talked about, how much we struggled here on this earth in our mental health so much. We both, like, when we were, suicidal or, struggled with anything like that, it was, like, each other that, like, we would, like, have to, like, make us, like, feel like we need to be here. And we were like this, and so it's like, if one of us was going out, like, we were going out together. That's just, like, that's how it was in my head.
Right.
And so when he was gone, it was just like, I don't know how I could, like, live. It was very hard.
How has the grieving process been for you?
I mean, like, for the first, like, week, I wasn't on my phone. My phone was shut off. It was, like, kind of like mute at some points. Dying, like, on suicide watch. It was terrible. Grieving is such a crazy thing. And I dealt with the, losing people in my life, but never the closest or the only person that I had. And it's just something that you can't really fathom until you're in it. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I was struggling so much already because I just went through, like, a breakup. And so it was just like, it was really weird for me. It felt like my entire life just, like, flipped upside down, and I was just like, I was just, like, falling apart. And I I was grieving and trying to deal with all my emotions alone, because that's the only way I knew how to, and I didn't really want to talk about it with anyone because it made it more real to me, and it was just like really hard for me to like just open up about, so I was dealing with it alone. And at the same time too, like my best friend Sabrina, I was just trying to be strong for her and strong for, his family and like everyone, that I was just dealing with everything by myself, and it ate me alive. And that's why, I ended up getting admitted actually into mental hospital, and the first one since I've been in, like, since like when I was 14. So it's pretty scary.
Did you go into the treatment center because of everything and that happened with Cooper?
Yeah, I just broke, I lost control fully, and I had a suicide attempt. I was taking Xanax for my anxiety and to like fly and all that stuff, so I was on that. And when you take an excessive amount of that, which I never had before, it just like turns you into someone that you're not. And I just like went into my car, I think, and I don't remember anything, but from what I was told, I was planning on driving off of a cliff. Well, I overdosed, and I think as soon as I started backing out, Bree and Sabrina just like pulled up, like right by my car, and they got me to get out and all that stuff. And like the next day, I just like, I think, opened up and was like kind of like vulnerable and honest for the first time, and I just like cried, and I was like, I'm so scared. And we just called the ambulance, and I got help.
And thank God you're here. Again, it's kind of like you've become so open that I feel like you've completely knocked all the shame away from just talking about these things, that people would look at someone and maybe think a different way even a couple years ago. What are you doing to try to find a reason to live right now?
It puts you in a perspective that's so interesting, because you just realize how much you've taken for granted. The fresh air and walking on the ground is just so, and being outside is just so like comforting and like amazing, that I was excited that I got, a second chance. And I just convinced myself, and especially after Cooper, like I've just gotten like, I've developed so much like faith, and I've become religious out of nowhere, that I was just like, God must want me here for a reason. I was like, there's no way that like I'm just not gone yet. So I have to do something. And I just also realized that like I just have such strong sympathy for everyone that struggles mentally and goes through hard times, that like I don't want to leave at all, because I want to be here in order to like make an impact for those struggling. And I feel like I still have just like so much to do, and I want to live for Cooper. And I just see life so differently now, and I feel like now, and the first time in forever, I've been open to like getting help seriously. And I've just like gone through waves where I hit rock bottom, and then I get help, and then as soon as I start feeling good again, like I stop because I think I'm fine. But it's like not true, and I just realized it's all about like maintenance and like the upkeep, and that like I just have to continue going. And so and I've also been like so anti-med that like now I'm like on a mood stabilizer, which is like, I feel like it's working.
That's like another thing I commend you for. There's so much stigma around medication, and I think like you just saying like everyone, it's almost like therapy. It's like you can't be told to do something until you're ready to do it. And I also think I would just like to say that you said, maybe you can help people. I feel like you're really doing that through your music. And I think it's really cool that you are talking about mental health. And I am so excited for your album to come out because I am a huge fan of your music. Talk to me about your album, the process, the songs, tell me everything.
Yeah, my album's called Young Forever, and I haven't really been religious, but Cooper has really helped me, find God and or anything like that. But at the time, and it's just it's weird after that. It's about heaven. There's a lot of things that come into play with faith and religion with my album. But at the time, it was I was living in hell when I wrote my album, that I fantasized about heaven so much that that's what it was about. And now with it's just really weird. And I wrote Die First. About such a special song for me, and at the time it was about my mom and Cooper, but it never out I never publicly said that it was about Cooper because I didn't want to think about it, but the people closest around me knew, and Cooper knew.
Do you think you're gonna ever be able to perform it?
Yeah, I have to soon, and I'm gonna make it a special moment because it has to be, but I can't really imagine me performing it without choking up and bawling my eyes out. But also at this point, it's if you're a fan of my music and you're a fan of me and you're there, it's what else do you expect?
That's what I feel you can be rest assured that every single person wherever you're singing is going to help you sing it because they're going to know the significance of that song and who it's for, and that is so fucking powerful. How do you feel about being this new rising artist and having all this exciting success around your talent right now?
It's very surreal for me. I feel I have really bad imposter syndrome, so I almost sometimes detach me as Nessa, from Nessa, and I don't know. I'm just I get so overwhelmed with the amount of love and support, but also it's I couldn't really care less if one person listens to my song or 1 million, so it's as long as there's one person out there that relates, but it's just so unreal to think about, and I'm just really excited because this is my dream.
I can't thank you enough for coming on, Nessa. I've had the pleasure of listening to your music and watching you on social media, but I can genuinely say, sitting down with you, you are such a unique, kind soul, and it's really cool to get to sit with you because I truly know you're going to do so many incredible things, and I can't wait to see it because you deserve to be here and you should be here, and I hope you are loved by so many people. So thank you for coming on Call Her Daddy.
Thank you so much. This is so amazing.